My daughter said, "I won't go on this trip unless I get to sit in first class." My name is Margaret Ellison. And the moment she said those words, I felt a cold shiver run through my chest, as if every sacrifice I had ever made for her had been reduced to nothing more than a plane ticket. I had imagined this trip for months, a carefully planned journey, meant to celebrate my 58th birthday, though I never called it that outright. Birthdays had always been complicated in our family. They reminded me of passing time, of the widening gap between my children's lives and my own. But this year, I thought, maybe a shared trip could bring us back together. A few days away from work, distractions, and screens, just us, the family I had devoted my entire life to. I booked the flights modestly, choosing economy for all of us. Not because I couldn't afford more, but because to me, traveling together was the point, not the size of the seat or the angle of the recline. I told myself it would be good for us to return to simple things, to laugh, to share meals, to remember that being together was worth more than any upgrade. But then she said it. My daughter, Emily. She was 27, beautiful in the way youth makes you glow without effort. Successful, or at least she carried herself like someone the world owed. Her voice was light, almost careless. "I won't go on this trip unless I get to sit in first class." At first, I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but the sharp stillness in her eyes told me otherwise. She wasn't smiling. She was dead serious. Something inside me tightened. "Emily," I said, my voice careful. "We're going together. The class doesn't matter. It's about family, not comfort." She shrugged. "It matters to me. I can't sit cramped for hours. If I don't have first class, I'll stay home." Her words fell heavy in the room. My younger daughter, Anna, glanced at me, wide-eyed, then quickly looked down at her phone. My husband sat stiff, his silence saying more than words could. And me? I felt the sting of humiliation. I remembered all the years I'd worked late nights as a teacher, grading papers while Emily slept soundly in her room. I remembered selling the gold watch my father had left me just so she could have the dress she wanted for prom. I remembered the whispered arguments with my husband when we couldn't afford both children's tuition, and I insisted we'd find a way because Emily deserved the best. And now here she was, holding all of it hostage for a first-class seat. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My mind spiraled with memories. Emily as a child, demanding the pink bicycle because the blue one was for poor kids. Emily at 16, rolling her eyes when I gave her a used car while her friends had new ones. Emily at 23, saying I should stop working so much because it's embarrassing that my mom is still teaching high school when other moms are living well. Each memory dug into me like shards of glass, and I realized something I had buried for years. Emily had grown entitled, not in spite of my sacrifices, but because of them. And perhaps, without meaning to, I had been the one who carved that entitlement into her. "Emily," I tried again, quieter now. "Don't do this. This isn't about first class. This is about us, about family." She looked at me as though I had spoken in a language she no longer understood. "Mom," she said, "you just don't get it. I've worked hard to have standards. If you want me there, respect that. Respect that." As though demanding to sit in first class was a matter of respect. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to ask her where she thought those standards had come from, if not from a mother who had given away every piece of herself to keep her comfortable. But I stayed silent. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the stack of tickets. Economy. Neat. Ordinary. Unpretentious. And yet suddenly, those slips of paper had become proof of everything I had given, everything I had lost, and everything my daughter had become. I pressed my hand to my chest. The house was quiet, but inside me there was a storm. I could hear my own breath ragged, uneven. Was this what my love had created? A daughter who thought so little of me, of us, that she could reduce family to a seat number? Anna walked into the kitchen then, her small footsteps hesitant. She sat across from me, clutching a mug of tea she hadn't touched. "Mom," she whispered, "are you okay?" I forced a smile. though my lips trembled. I'm fine, sweetheart. But she looked at me with eyes that saw too much. She shouldn't talk to you like that. Her words pierced me. Simple, honest, protective. For so long, Anna had been the quiet one, the overlooked one. But in that moment, she was my anchor. I reached across the table, took her hand. Thank you, I whispered. And in the silence that followed, I realized something. This trip would not just be about escape or celebration. It would be about truth. About exposing what had been hidden in the shadows for too long. My daughter thought she could bend me to her will with threats of absence. But I was no longer the mother who gave and gave without question. I would make a decision. A choice that would change everything. And for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of strength return to me. The next morning, Emily breezed into the kitchen as if nothing had happened. Her hair was perfectly styled, her phone in her hand, her nails painted in a way that reminded me how much money she spent on herself each month. She kissed her father on the cheek, ignored Anna's quiet presence at the table, and sat down across from me with a smile that almost seemed rehearsed. "Did you think about what I said?" she asked casually, pouring herself coffee as though she were discussing the weather. I looked at her, really looked at her. The child I had carried, the girl I had clothed, the young woman I had prayed, would find her way. And what I saw was not just my daughter anymore. I saw entitlement. I saw the quiet, sharp edges of someone who had learned that love meant endless giving, and who had never once considered what it cost the giver. "Yes," I said, my voice low. "I thought about it all night." Her eyes lit up as if victory were already hers. "Good. Then I assume you understand." Understand. The word made me feel sick. Understand that my love wasn't enough unless it was packaged with luxury? Understand that motherhood meant servitude until the end of my days? "I understand," I said slowly, "that this isn't about the seat, Emily. It's about something else." She tilted her head, frowning slightly, but not in confusion and annoyance. As if my refusal to submit neatly to her demand was an inconvenience she didn't have time for. "Mom," she said, sighing dramatically, "why do you always make things so complicated? It's just a ticket. You can afford it. Why do you care so much?" Why do I care? The question struck like lightning. I cared because I had given my life to these children. I cared because I had sold memories of my father's watch. Because I had walked to school in shoes with holes so Emily could have new ones. Because I had taught other people's children during the day and tutored at night just to give her a better chance. And here she sat, sipping coffee, her voice dripping with the casual arrogance of someone who believed the world revolved around her. Anna spoke then, surprising me. "It's not just a ticket, Emily." Emily's head whipped around, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" Anna's voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "It's the way you talk to Mom. Like she owes you something, like nothing is ever good enough." The silence that fell over the table was heavy, suffocating. My heart thudded against my ribs, torn between pride for Anna and fear for the storm I knew Emily would unleash. Emily laughed. A sharp, cruel sound. "Oh, please. Don't start with your jealousy act, Anna. Just because Mom never sacrificed for you the way she did for me doesn't mean you get to throw tantrums now." Anna's face flushed red. She looked down, her shoulders stiff. I couldn't take it anymore. "Enough!" My voice cracked through the air, startling even myself. Emily's eyes widened for a moment, then narrowed again. "Do you hear yourself?" I said, my hands trembling. "Do you hear the way you speak not just to me, but to your sister? As if the world owes you everything and everyone else is beneath you?" Emily's lips pressed together in a thin line. I stood, my chair scraping against the tile. "I need you to understand something, Emily. My love is not a blank check. It is not measured by the price of a ticket. It is measured by the years of my life that I poured into raising you, by the tears I shed when you were sick, by the sacrifices I made so you could stand where you are now." For a moment, my voice shook too much to continue. My throat tightened with the weight of years unspoken. "And yet," I whispered, You sit here and tell me you won't go on a family trip unless you are given first class. Do you not see what that means? Do you not see who you've become? Her face shifted then, just slightly. The mask cracked. But instead of remorse, I saw defensiveness. You're being dramatic, she said, waving her hand dismissively. This isn't some moral lesson. It's travel. People choose comfort when they can. Why can't you? Because comfort, I said sharply, isn't worth the cost of dignity. Not mine, not Anna's, not this family's. For the first time, my husband spoke. His voice was quiet, almost tired. Emily, your mother's right. Emily's head snapped toward him. Betrayal flickered in her eyes. You too? She demanded. You're all against me now? No, I said, shaking my head slowly. We are not against you. We are against what you're becoming. Emily pushed back her chair and stood, her arms crossed. She looked so tall, so sure of herself, and yet for the first time, I noticed how fragile that confidence was. It was built on conditions, on material things, on illusions of superiority. And in that moment, I knew this trip wasn't about celebration anymore. It was about revelation. I thought of the way my students used to look at me when I taught them about choices, about how a single decision could shape the course of their lives. This was Emily's moment. And it was mine, too. She had unmasked herself with one demand, but now, standing in the kitchen with her arms folded and her chin lifted, I saw the full truth. Entitlement wasn't just a trait she carried. It was a shadow I had helped cast by giving too much, too easily, for too long. I sat back down slowly, steadying myself. Emily, I said, calmer now. The decision is yours, but don't mistake my silence for weakness. Don't think my sacrifices mean you can hold us hostage. If you don't want to come, you won't come. But I will no longer buy your love. Her eyes widened just a fraction, but enough. She wasn't used to hearing me speak this way. And in that flicker of hesitation, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, the balance of power between mother and daughter was no longer one-sided. Emily stormed out of the kitchen without another word, her heels clicking against the floor like punctuation marks. I sat back, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. Anna reached for me across the table, and I held onto her fingers as though they were the only thing keeping me upright. Somewhere in the silence, a truth settled into me like a stone dropped in water. Love without limits becomes servitude, and I had been serving for far too long. That day, after Emily stormed out, the house fell into an uneasy silence. Anna had gone back to her room. My husband busied himself with small repairs he didn't really need to do, and I sat in the living room, staring at the framed photographs on the mantel. Each picture told a story, and every story led back to the same question. How had I gotten here? The images blurred as memories rose unbidden. I saw myself years ago, much younger, with two little girls clinging to my arms. Emily had been the one with the loudest laugh, the most insistent cry. She was demanding from the very beginning. If she wanted milk, she wouldn't stop wailing until the bottle was in her mouth. If she wanted a toy, she wouldn't settle for anything less than exactly what she had envisioned. I used to tell myself it was determination, that fierce willpower that would make her a leader someday. And maybe that was true. But somewhere along the way, what I celebrated as determination had hardened into entitlement. One memory cut sharper than the rest. Emily was 12 when she came home from school, furious that the shoes I bought her weren't the same brand all her friends wore. I had saved for weeks, putting aside pennies from grocery budgets, just to afford those sneakers. But they weren't enough. Everyone laughed at me, she had cried. Why can't you just buy me the right ones? Don't you care how embarrassing this is for me? I had sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair, whispering apologies I should never have given. I promised her I'd do better. And the next month, I sold my father's gold watch to buy her the pair she wanted. She smiled then, satisfied, and I told myself it was worth it. But now, years later, I saw the crack in that bargain. Every sacrifice I made taught her not gratitude, but expectation. Another memory. Emily at 17, standing in front of a mirror in her prom dress. She twirled, the sequins shimmering under the light. I had worked 3 extra tutoring sessions that month to afford that dress. My hands ached from writing notes late into the night. "Do you like it?" I had asked. She glanced at me, shrugged, and said, "It's fine." Then she picked up her phone and texted her friends, already distracted. That "fine" burned more than any insult. There had been so many moments like that. When she got into college and demanded her own car, not the old sedan I had driven for years, but a new one, sleek and spotless. When she rolled her eyes at my suggestion she take a part-time job, insisting she deserved to focus on her studies. When she complained that my career as a school teacher wasn't impressive enough to introduce at her social gatherings. Each time, I told myself it was just a phase, that she would grow out of it, that my giving was just a bridge to her independence. But now, staring at those framed photographs, I knew the truth. I had built that bridge too wide, too long, and she had never stepped off of it. The sound of Anna's footsteps pulled me from my thoughts. She came quietly, sitting on the edge of the sofa, without saying a word. She didn't have to. Her presence was comfort enough. "You were always the quiet one," I said softly, brushing her hair back from her face. "You never asked for much." She gave me a sad smile. "Maybe that's why no one noticed me." Her words hit me harder than I expected. In all my efforts to appease Emily, had I overlooked Anna's quiet needs? Had I let one daughter's fire eclipse the other's gentle light? The guilt pressed heavy on my chest. "I'm sorry, Anna," I whispered. "If I made you feel invisible." She shook her head quickly. "It's not about that, Mom. I see what she does to you. And it hurts me too. You don't deserve it." Nah. Tears welled in my eyes. It was strange how the child who asked for the least often gave the most. That night, I lay awake in bed, turning over the years in my mind. All the choices. All the moments I could have stood firmer, drawn clearer boundaries. I thought of Emily's words. Respect that. Respect. It had always flowed one way. I had respected her wishes, her comfort, her pride. But had she ever respected me? As the darkness pressed in, I realized something bitter. Love without boundaries is a cage. And I had locked myself inside it for nearly 3 decades. The flashbacks wouldn't let me go. I saw Emily's little hand tugging mine in toy stores, demanding dolls that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I saw her teenage scowl when she compared her clothes to others. I saw her grown-up disdain when she suggested I quit teaching because it made us look small. Each memory was a thread, weaving a tapestry of truth I had been too afraid to see. By the time the dawn light crept through the curtains, I knew this trip wasn't just about the destination anymore. It was about whether I would keep feeding that entitlement or whether I would finally break the cycle. When I walked into the kitchen the next morning, Emily was already there, scrolling through her phone, sipping juice as though nothing had happened. She looked up briefly, offered me a curt nod, and went back to her screen. Something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about a first-class seat. It was about decades of choices. About a mother who had loved too much, given too much, and now had to decide whether to reclaim her dignity or continue living in her daughter's shadow. And for the first time, in a long time, I knew which choice I had to make. Have you ever been in a situation like this? If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. The tension in the house became unbearable after that. It was like a storm brewing in every corner, waiting to explode. The trip that I had planned so carefully, with every detail meant to bring us closer, had turned into the sharp wedge driving us apart. At breakfast, Emily barely spoke to anyone. She scrolled through her phone, the screen glowing against her face like a wall she hid behind. When I tried to ask if she had packed, she gave me nothing more than a curt, "Not yet." Anna's fork clinked nervously against her plate, her appetite gone. My husband, John, kept sipping his coffee, his eyes darting between us but never settling long enough to confront what was happening. Silence was the loudest sound in that kitchen. Later, when Emily left the house for errands, John finally spoke. Maybe, he began carefully, we should just get her the ticket. His words were soft, almost apologetic. He wasn't siding with her, not fully, but I could hear the weariness in his voice, the same weariness I had lived with for years. John, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Do you hear yourself? Do you realize what you're asking? He rubbed his forehead, sighing. I know, but maybe it's not worth the fight. Maybe if we give her what she wants, she'll calm down, and the trip won't be ruined. The trip won't be ruined. The irony nearly made me laugh. Didn't he see? It was already ruined. This isn't about a seat anymore, I said firmly. It's about respect. It's about what kind of family we are, or what kind of family we're letting her turn us into. John met my eyes then, his own filled with resignation. I just don't want more fighting, Margaret. I don't want to lose her. The ache in his words struck me deeply. That was the trap, wasn't it? We gave in to Emily because we were afraid of losing her. But every time we surrendered, we lost a piece of ourselves. Anna, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. Dad. She doesn't care about losing us. Not really. She only cares about getting her way. Her words were like a knife, precise and painful, and yet they were the truth. For the rest of the day, the air in the house felt thick, every interaction strained. I caught Anna wiping away tears in her room when she thought no one was looking. John buried himself in fixing a loose hinge on the door, working longer than necessary just to avoid conversation. And me? I drifted from room to room, feeling like a ghost in my own home. When Emily returned that evening, she carried herself like nothing had happened. She hummed a tune as she placed shopping bags on the counter, oblivious to the heaviness she left in her wake. But her cheerfulness wasn't real. I could see the flicker of defiance in her eyes. She was daring me to challenge her again. At dinner, the fracture deepened. I need to know, Emily said suddenly, setting down her fork. Did you book the first-class ticket? Her voice was calm, but beneath it was the sharp edge of a threat. I froze. John's hand twitched against his glass. Anna dropped her fork, the clatter loud in the quiet room. No, I said at last, my voice quiet but unwavering. I did not. Emily leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Then I'm not going. Her declaration landed like a stone in water, sending ripples of shock across the table. John tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. Anna looked at me, her face pale, waiting for my reaction. You would really do that? I asked softly. You would skip a family trip, the one I planned to bring us together, just because you can't sit in first class? Emily's expression didn't falter. Yes, there it was. The truth, naked and merciless. She wasn't bluffing. John slammed his hand down on the table, startling us all. Enough, he shouted. Do you hear yourself, Emily? Do you know how selfish you sound? It was the first time he had raised his voice to her. For a second, Emily's confidence cracked, but only for a second. She lifted her chin and replied, I don't care what you think. I deserve it. I earned it. I leaned forward, my voice cutting through the chaos. And what exactly did you earn, Emily? Who paid for your education? Who worked nights to keep food on this table? Who gave up her own life so you could have one? The silence afterward was suffocating. My chest heaved, the weight of years pressing down on me. Emily looked away, her lips tight. For once, she didn't have a retort, but her silence wasn't surrender. It was anger simmering beneath the surface. Anna spoke up quietly, her voice trembling but steady. I don't want to go on this trip if it's going to be like this. It's supposed to be for Mom. Not a fight about who's better. Her words hung in the air, fragile but unshakable. And in that moment, I realized the truth. Emily's ultimatum had already fractured us. Whether we went on the trip or not, the family I thought I had was breaking apart. That night, lying awake in bed, I could hear muffled sobs coming from Anna's room. Down the hall, John's heavy footsteps paced the floor, and Emily's door stayed firmly shut, a silent barrier between her world and ours. I turned toward the ceiling, tears pooling in my eyes. I had wanted a trip to bring us together. Instead, I had uncovered just how far apart we really were. The rift wasn't just about the trip. It was about years of silence, of sacrifices unacknowledged, of love mistaken for servitude. And though it hurt more than I could bear, I knew one thing for certain. The storm had only begun. The next morning, I woke up with a weight pressing on my chest, heavier than any I had felt before. I had spent the night replaying Emily's ultimatum, her cold certainty, the silence that followed her refusal. I told myself, I couldn't let this pattern continue. Not for her, not for Anna, and not for me. So I made a decision. We needed to talk. Not in passing, not half hidden between chores and distractions. We needed a confrontation. I found Emily in the living room, curled on the couch with her phone in her hand, legs tucked under a blanket. The morning light streamed in through the window, casting a glow across her face. She looked so much like the little girl she used to be that for a brief, fleeting second, my heart softened. Then she looked up, her eyes narrowed, and the memory shattered. Emily, I said firmly, standing near the armchair across from her. We need to talk. She sighed dramatically, dropping her phone on the cushion. About what? The trip again? Mom, I already told you. No, I cut her off, sharper than I intended. This isn't just about the trip, it's about us. She raised an eyebrow, leaning back against the couch. Us? Or is this another one of your lectures about how ungrateful I am? The venom in her tone nearly undid me, but I steadied my breath. If the truth feels like a lecture, Emily, maybe you need to hear it more than once. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She crossed her arms, waiting. I sat down, my hands clasped in my lap. I have given you everything I could. Not just money, not just comfort. I gave you my time, my energy, my youth, and yet, every time I thought I was helping you, I was teaching you something else. That love comes with no boundaries, that you could take without ever giving back. Emily rolled her eyes. Here we go again. Mom, this is so overblown. It's a plane ticket. I don't see why you're turning it into a Greek tragedy. I leaned forward, my voice lowering. Because it's not about the ticket. It's about what the ticket represents. You held this family hostage with one demand. You told us your presence, your love was conditional on luxury. Do you understand how cruel that is? Her eyes flickered, but she quickly masked it with defiance. I just want comfort. That's not cruel. That's knowing my worth. Worth? The word burned in my throat. Emily, your worth is not measured in legroom or champagne. Your worth should come from how you treat the people who love you. And right now, you are treating us like servants, not family. Bah. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw a flash of something shame, maybe, or fear. But it disappeared as quickly as it came. You're just being dramatic, she said again. No, I replied firmly. I'm being honest. The room fell silent. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to pause. I could hear my own heart pounding, each beat echoing the years of swallowed words I had kept hidden. Finally, Emily stood, tossing the blanket aside. I don't need to listen to this. If you can't respect me, then don't expect me to come along. Her words cut deep, but instead of breaking me, they ignited something. Respect? I rose too, my voice trembling with power. Respect is earned, Emily. And right now, you are demanding it without giving any in return. You don't respect me. You don't respect Anna. You don't even respect yourself enough to see what you've become." Her face flushed, her hands tightening into fists at her sides. "You're unbelievable," she snapped. "After everything you've done for me, you think you can just stand there and judge me?" "Yes," I whispered, my voice raw. "Because I'm your mother. And if I don't tell you the truth, who will?" Emily stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The mask of superiority she always wore seemed to falter, just for a second. And in that second, I saw her not as the entitled adult she had become, but as the little girl I had failed to guide properly. But the moment passed, and her walls shot back up. She grabbed her phone, slung her bag over her shoulder, and stormed out of the house without another word. The door slammed so hard the frame rattled. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, my hands trembling. My body felt heavy, but my spirit oddly felt lighter. I had spoken the truth, finally. I had refused to bow, refused to buy her love. Anna appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Mom, are you okay?" I turned to her, forcing a smile, though my eyes burned with tears. "I don't know, sweetheart, but maybe for the first time, I'm starting to be." She crossed the room and hugged me tightly. I held her close, burying my face in her hair, feeling the warmth of the daughter who had given me more comfort than I had ever asked for. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about Emily's words, her anger, her defiance. And I realized something. Confrontation isn't about changing someone else. It's about refusing to let them change you into something smaller. And in that moment, though the future was uncertain, I knew one thing clearly. I would not shrink anymore. The morning after Emily stormed out, the house felt hollow. Her absence didn't make it quieter, it made the silence heavier, like a weight pressing against the walls. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee untouched, staring at the steam curling into the air. I should have felt relief. For once, there was no sharp tongue to lash out at me, no demands hanging over my head. But instead, I felt something different, a gnawing resentment that pulsed deep in my chest. It startled me. Resentment wasn't a word I had ever associated with motherhood. Mothers are supposed to feel unconditional love, patience without end. That's what I had believed my whole life. But now, sitting there with a cold cup of coffee and an aching heart, I realized there was another side of love, the side that can curdle into bitterness when taken for granted too long. I thought back to the confrontation. The way Emily's eyes had narrowed, her lips curling with disdain. The way she had thrown my sacrifices back at me, as though they were nothing. I could still hear her voice. "You're unbelievable. After everything you've done for me, you think you can just stand there and judge me?" Yes, I could. I had earned that right. But the way she said it, the venom in her tone, it lingered like poison in my veins. John came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. He looked at me with the weary expression of a man who had lived too many years balancing on a rope between peace and conflict. "She'll come around," he muttered, pouring himself coffee. I didn't answer. "Margaret," he said gently, "she's our daughter. She doesn't mean half the things she says." I looked up at him, my resentment boiling hotter. "Doesn't mean it?" "John, she's 27 years old. She knew exactly what she was saying." He sighed, running a hand over his face. "You've always been harder on her than Anna." That broke something in me. Harder? Do you know how much I've given that girl? Do you know the things I've given up? The things I've swallowed? Just to make her life easier? And still she looks at me like I've failed her. John didn't reply. He just sipped his coffee, his silence both a shield and a weapon. The resentment deepened. It wasn't just toward Emily anymore. It seeped toward him, too. Toward the way he always folded into silence, leaving me to carry the burden of discipline, of conflict, of sacrifice. Anna entered the kitchen quietly, her eyes flicking between us. She sat down across from me, her small hands wrapping around a mug of tea. "Mom," she said softly, "don't let her get to you. She's not worth it." The innocence in her words, The raw honesty made my throat tighten. "She's my daughter," I whispered. "Of course she's worth it, but maybe I'm not worth what this is doing to me." Anna's eyes filled with tears, and she reached for my hand. I held on to her as if she were my anchor. Later that afternoon, while John disappeared into his garage workshop and Anna retreated to her books, I found myself alone in the living room, staring at the photographs again. Emily's face was in nearly every frame: birthdays, graduations, holidays. Her smile beamed from the glass as though mocking me. I remembered every sacrifice tied to those smiles: the watch, the tutoring, the endless hours of grading papers until my vision blurred. The promotions I turned down because they required too much time away from home. And the anger rose again. Had I done this to myself? Had I, in trying to be the perfect mother, planted the seeds of my own undoing? I saw the pattern clearly now. I had thought I was showing love, but what I had been teaching was expectation. Every time I gave in, I watered those seeds. And now, Emily's entitlement was a full-grown vine, choking the family. My chest ached. I pressed a hand to it, feeling the thrum of my heart beneath my palm. I thought of Anna again. Of her words at the table. "She doesn't care about losing us." Not really. A tear slipped down my cheek. I hated the thought, but it was true. Emily didn't care about losing us. She only cared about winning. About having control. And I hated her for it. The thought startled me so much, I gasped aloud. Hate was too strong, wasn't it? Mothers aren't supposed to hate their children. But what else could I call this twisting, dark feeling that clenched my heart every time I remembered her words? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to John's steady breathing, my mind racing. Resentment whispered, like a voice in my ear. "You gave too much. You made her this way. And now she thinks she's better than you." The words replayed until I sat up, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, worn, but something new burned in her eyes, a fury that had been buried for too long. I leaned closer to the mirror and whispered, "No more." The resentment wasn't just a wound. It was becoming fuel. Fuel for a decision I knew I'd have to make soon. The seeds had been planted long ago, watered by my sacrifices, fertilized by my silence. But now, they had grown into a thorny tangle that threatened to strangle the whole family. And I realized, if I didn't cut it back, if I didn't stop this now, there would be nothing left of us to save. It was the third night after the confrontation when Anna came to my room. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the half-packed suitcase by the door, wondering if this trip would even happen at all. Emily had been shutting herself in her room for hours at a time, barely speaking to anyone. When she did appear, it was only to remind me, in her own subtle ways, that she hadn't changed her mind. Anna knocked softly. "Mom? Can I come in?" Her voice was gentle, hesitant. I nodded, and she slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She sat down beside me, her eyes downcast, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" I asked. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she whispered, "I hate how she treats you." My chest tightened. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, not in rejection, but in frustration. "I've been watching this for years, Mom. The way Emily talks to you, the way you give in, it hurts me. It hurts to see you let her walk all over you." Her words pierced me deeper than Emily's ever could. Emily's cruelty was sharp, but expected. Anna's honesty was soft, but devastating. "I didn't mean to let her," I said, my voice trembling. I thought I was helping her, giving her the best." Anna shook her head. "You gave her everything, and she thinks it means she deserves more. But what about you, Mom? What about what you deserve?" Tears welled in my eyes. No one had ever asked me that before. Not John, not Emily, Not even myself. I don't know, I admitted. I don't know what I deserve anymore. Though, Anna finally looked up at me, her eyes burning with something I hadn't seen in her before. Determination. You deserve respect. You deserve love that isn't bought, and I don't care if Emily never gives that to you. I will. I want you to know that. Her words cracked something open inside me. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. She was smaller than Emily, softer in demeanor, quieter in nature. And maybe that was why I had overlooked her strength all these years. But in that moment, Anna was my anchor. I love you. I whispered into her hair. I love you too, Mom, she replied. And I don't want you to think you're alone in this. I'm with you. Whatever you decide about Emily, whatever happens on this trip, I'll stand by you. The tears came freely then, not from sadness, but from relief. For so long, I had felt like I was fighting this battle alone, trapped between a defiant daughter and a husband too weary to intervene. But now, here was Anna, stepping forward, offering me the support I had so desperately needed. That night, after she went back to her room, I lay awake thinking about her words. She was right. I had been so consumed with keeping the peace, with making sure Emily had everything she demanded, that I had failed to see the quiet strength of the daughter who asked for nothing. I promised myself I would not fail her again. The next morning, Anna joined me in the kitchen while I made breakfast. She moved easily beside me, handing me the butter, setting the plates, without needing to be asked. Her presence was calming, grounding. John shuffled in, still half asleep, and raised an eyebrow when he saw us working side by side. You two are up early. Anna smiled faintly. I just wanted to help Mom today. He looked at her, then at me, as if sensing the shift. But he didn't say anything. When Emily came down, she barely glanced at us. She sat at the table, scrolling through her phone, her expression unreadable. But I noticed how her eyes flicked toward Anna once, twice, as though sensing a change she couldn't quite place. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it hang. I let Emily feel the weight of it. After breakfast, Anna and I walked together to the park down the street. The crisp air carried the scent of freshly cut grass, and the sound of children playing echoed around us. Mom, she said as we sat on a bench, can I tell you something I've never said before? Of course, I replied. She took a deep breath. Sometimes I resented you too. The admission stunned me. You? Why? Because you gave her everything, she said, her voice trembling. I know you didn't mean to, but it felt like I didn't matter, like I had to be invisible just to keep the peace. My heart shattered. I reached for her hands. Anna, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to feel that way. How? I know, she whispered. And I forgave you a long time ago. Because I saw what you were going through. I saw how much you were hurting, even when you tried to hide it. And I decided I wouldn't add to your pain. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. How had I not seen it? While Emily demanded, Anna absorbed. While Emily took, Anna gave. While Emily built walls of entitlement, Anna built bridges of empathy. I realized then that the ally I had been searching for wasn't someone outside the family. It was the daughter I had overlooked, the one who had quietly carried me through without asking for anything in return. As we walked back home, something inside me shifted. I was no longer just a mother trapped in a cycle of sacrifice. I was a woman with a choice. And now, I had someone by my side who believed in me enough to help me make it. That evening, when Emily once again brought up the first-class ticket, her tone sharp, her patience gone, I didn't falter. Anna sat beside me, her presence steady, her eyes locked on mine. And for the first time, I felt strong enough to face Emily without fear. Emily, I said calmly. The answer is still no. And if you choose not to come, that is your choice. But I won't be manipulated anymore. Emily's mouth opened, ready to unleash her usual fury. But when her eyes darted to Anna and saw the unflinching solidarity between us, something in her expression wavered. It wasn't victory yet, but it was the beginning of a shift. And in that moment, I realized. Sometimes the allies we need most aren't the ones who shout the loudest, but the ones who have been quietly standing beside us all along. The night before the trip, the air in the house was electric, heavy with tension that no one dared acknowledge out loud. Suitcases lined the hallway, neatly packed and ready, but there was still one shadow hanging over everything: Emily's demand. She hadn't softened. If anything, her silence had only sharpened the edge of her resolve. She barely spoke during dinner, pushing her food around her plate, eyes darting at me with thinly veiled hostility. Anna sat beside me, quietly supportive, her presence like an invisible shield. John tried to break the silence with small talk, but his words fell flat, collapsing under the weight of what we all knew was coming. When the dishes were cleared, Emily finally broke the silence. Her voice was calm, deliberate, but under it was a tremor of threat. "So," she said, setting down her glass of water, "I'll ask one last time. Did you upgrade my ticket?" The room went still. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "Number." Her jaw tightened. "Then I'm not going." The words hit like a hammer, even though I had expected them. Anna's fork clattered onto her plate, her eyes darting to mine with fear. John leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as though bracing for an explosion. "Emily," I said softly, "you would really do this? You would walk away from your family from a trip meant to bring us together over a seat on a plane?" Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "It's not just a seat, it's respect. You never give me what I ask for, and now you're surprised I'm standing my ground?" I almost laughed at the irony. "Respect?" I said, my voice rising. "Respect isn't about giving in to every demand. Respect is earned, Emily. And tonight, you're not showing an ounce of it." Her eyes burned. "I've earned more than you've ever given me." The words struck deep, slicing through years of sacrifice. My chest tightened, but instead of breaking, something inside me hardened. "Earned?" I whispered. "You think you earned the tuition I worked myself sick to pay? You think you earned the car I bought by pawning your grandfather's watch? You think you earned the nights I stayed up tutoring, crying from exhaustion, just to keep this family afloat?" Emily looked away, her expression faltering, but only for a second. Then she shook her head. "That was your choice. No one asked you to do that." The cruelty of it left me breathless. My hands trembled, but I forced them to still. "You're right," I said finally. "No one asked me. I did it because I loved you. But love without gratitude becomes poison. And I won't drink it anymore." The silence that followed was sharp, suffocating. John pressed his palms into his face, muttering, "God, why does it have to be like this?" Anna's voice broke the silence, trembling but clear. "Because Emily doesn't care about us. She only cares about herself." Emily whipped her head toward her sister, her eyes narrowing. "Stay out of this." "No," Anna said, louder now. "I won't stay out of it anymore. You've treated Mom like she's nothing for years, and I'm sick of it. You don't get to keep hurting her and acting like you're the victim." Emily's face flushed, her fists clenching. For a moment, I feared she might lash out physically. But instead, she stood abruptly, her chair scraping hard against the floor. "I'm done," she spat. "If you won't respect me, then I won't go. I don't need this trip. I don't need any of you." Her words echoed through the room as she stormed upstairs, the sound of her door slamming reverberating through the house. The breaking point had come. I sat there in the stillness, my chest heavy, my hands trembling against the table. John looked at me with hollow eyes, his face lined with exhaustion. Anna reached across the table, gripping my hand tightly, her strength anchoring me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I wish she wasn't like this." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. "It's not your fault, Anna. This is something I let happen. For too long." That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. Emily's words cut deep, but they also crystallized something in me. She was right, in one way. I had made those choices. I had given too much, sacrificed too much, out of love. But she was wrong about what that meant. It didn't mean she was owed more. It meant I had the power to stop. I realized then that tomorrow would not just be the start of a trip. It would be the beginning of a reckoning. If Emily came, it would be on my terms. And if she didn't, well, maybe that was the consequence she needed to face. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her absence. I was afraid of what would happen if I kept letting her entitlement control us. The breaking point had arrived. And now, there was no turning back. The morning of the trip arrived with a gray sky, heavy clouds pressing low against the horizon. I woke before anyone else, the house unnervingly quiet. For a long moment, I sat at the edge of my bed, listening to the silence, trying to steady my breathing. This was it. The day everything would come to light. I walked into the kitchen, the smell of coffee, comforting yet hollow. The suitcases stood lined near the door, like obedient soldiers waiting for orders. 3 of them. Not 4. Emily hadn't packed. She appeared eventually, her hair immaculate, her outfit pressed and polished, as though she were preparing for a magazine spread rather than a family trip. Her phone was in her hand. As always, her eyes fixed on the glowing screen. She didn't say good morning. I studied her as she poured juice, her movements graceful, deliberate, and detached. There was a time when I would have bent over backward to make her smile before a trip, slipping her favorite snack into her bag, buying her a new scarf she didn't need, smoothing out every possible discomfort so she could enjoy herself. But not today. Today, the silence between us was my boundary. John came downstairs next, his face drawn with fatigue. He glanced between us, then sighed. So, is she coming? Emily looked up, a slow smirk forming. That depends. Did Mom get me the ticket? John's gaze shifted to me. For a moment, I saw the old reflex in his eyes, the instinct to plead with me, to urge me to give in just for the sake of peace. But then he must have seen the steel in my expression, because he didn't speak. No, I said firmly. Your ticket is the same as everyone else's. Emily blinked, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. Then she laughed short, incredulous, sharp. You're joking. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The tickets were already in my purse. Her laughter cut off abruptly. You're serious? I nodded. Yes, I am. Her smirk vanished, replaced by a hard glare. Then I'm not going. Simple as that. Something inside me broke then, not with pain, but with clarity. I realized that all these years, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every compromise I made, had all led to this. A daughter who would abandon her family for the comfort of a leather seat and free champagne. Then you won't go, I said quietly. That's your choice. The words shocked even me. They weren't spoken in anger. They weren't meant to wound. They were simply the truth. Anna, who had been standing silently near the doorway, gasped softly. She stepped forward, her face pale, but her eyes shining with something close to admiration. For once, I wasn't giving in. Emily scoffed, her eyes darting to her sister. Oh, don't look so smug, Anna. You'll be in economy too. Don't think this is some victory for you. Anna straightened. I don't care where I sit. At least I'll be there for Mom. The sting of that sentence hit Emily like a slap. Her face hardened, but she said nothing. She grabbed her phone and stalked out of the kitchen, leaving us in silence once more. John rubbed his temples, his voice low. Margaret, are you sure? I met his eyes. Yes, I've never been more sure. The drive to the airport was somber. Emily sat in the back seat, arms folded, her eyes fixed out the window as though we didn't exist. Anna sat beside her, earbuds in, but I noticed she wasn't listening to anything. Her hands rested in her lap, tense, her gaze flicking toward me every so often, searching for reassurance. When we arrived, the airport buzzed with travelers, families hugging, children laughing, announcements echoing overhead. It should have felt exciting, the start of something joyful. But for us, it felt like the edge of a cliff. We reached the check-in counter. I handed over the tickets. The attendant smiled politely, printed our boarding passes, and slid them across the counter. 3 in economy. No first-class upgrade. Emily picked up her pass, her face darkening as she read the seat number. Her eyes shot to me, burning with rage. "You really did it," she hissed. "You really think you can humiliate me like this?" Her words drew curious glances from people nearby. I felt the weight of their eyes, the sting of public shame creeping up my spine. For a moment, my old reflex surged the urge to placate, to smooth over, to beg her to lower her voice. But then I saw Anna watching me, her expression pleading, and I knew what I had to do. I stood tall, my voice clear. "I didn't humiliate you, Emily. You did that to yourself." The words hung in the air, cutting through the noise of the terminal. Emily's mouth opened, then closed again. Her face flushed red. John placed a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. Anna squeezed my arm, silently cheering me on. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt strong. Emily glared at me, her chest heaving. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You'll regret treating me this way." But even as she said it, I saw something flicker in her eyes, doubt. Maybe even fear. I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and looked at her calmly. "No, Emily, I think this is the first time I won't regret my choice." We walked toward security. Emily lingered behind for a moment, as though deciding whether to follow. My heart pounded, but I didn't turn back. If she wanted to come, she would. If she didn't, that would be her decision. Either way, the truth was about to be revealed to her, to John, to Anna, to everyone. How do you think they will react when I reveal that to everyone? Airports are strange places. They are filled with constant motion, rolling suitcases, rushed footsteps, overhead announcements, and yet, for me that morning, time seemed to move painfully slow. Every step we took toward the gate was heavy, shadowed by Emily's simmering anger. She trailed behind us, her heels clicking hard against the tiles, her body stiff with fury. At one point, she walked so slowly that people had to swerve around her, muttering under their breath. Normally, Emily would have snapped back at strangers, but today, she seemed consumed by one thought only: how to make me bend. When we reached the gate, I tried to focus on the simple things: the rows of chairs, the smell of coffee from a nearby cafe, Anna quietly fiddling with her earbuds. John sat stiffly, his eyes darting between us, as if he were praying the storm might pass. But I knew better. The storm wasn't going to pass, it was going to break. And it did. As soon as boarding was announced, Emily exploded. She stood abruptly, waving her ticket in the air. "This is humiliating. Do you expect me to sit like cattle in the back while other people are in first class? Do you realize how pathetic this makes me look?" Her voice rang out across the waiting area. Dozens of eyes turned to us, curious, judgmental, some even pitying. Heat flooded my face, but I stood rooted, refusing to shrink. "Emily," I said firmly, though my voice trembled, "lower your voice." She laughed, sharp and cruel. "Oh, now you're embarrassed? Maybe you should have thought about that before you bought me this garbage ticket." She waved it again for emphasis, as though flashing evidence of a crime. Anna's face burned red. "Emily, stop," she whispered. "You're making a scene." "I don't care," Emily snapped. "I should make a scene. People need to see how you treat me like I'm nothing. After everything I've done, after everything I've become, you think I belong in economy?" The words stung more than I expected. After everything she had done? The audacity nearly stole my breath. But I knew this was the fallout. The moment when years of silent compromise had finally caught fire. I looked around. People were staring openly now. A young couple whispering, a man shaking his head, an older woman frowning in sympathy at me. For once, I didn't care what they thought. This wasn't about strangers. This was about my daughter, my family, and the truth I could no longer bury. I stood tall. "Emily," I said, my voice steady, "this isn't about where you sit. This is about who you are. And right now, you're showing everyone exactly that." Her mouth dropped open, her face flushing crimson. "You're trying to humiliate me." "No," I said softly. "I'm letting you reveal yourself. You've been doing it all along." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's chest rose and fell sharply, her hands trembling as she gripped the ticket. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. John finally stood, placing a hand on her arm. "Enough," he said, his voice firm. "Sit down, or don't, but stop blaming your mother for choices she doesn't owe you." Emily ripped her arm free. "Oh, of course you take her side. You always take her side when it benefits you. You're both pathetic." Gasps rippled around us. The venom in her voice was undeniable. Undeniable, even to strangers. Anna stood then, stepping closer to me. Her small frame trembled, but her voice was clear. "Mom doesn't owe you anything, Emily. None of us do. If you can't see that, then maybe you shouldn't come at all." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. Emily froze, her glare fixed on Anna, her lips twitching as though forming a retort. But nothing came out. For once, she was speechless. Boarding continued. Passengers filed past, casting us lingering glances. The gate agent called our row. I picked up my bag, my heart pounding, and turned to Emily. "This is it," I said quietly. "You're either with us or you're not. But don't expect me to change my decision." Emily's eyes burned with rage, but I also saw something else, a crack in her defiance, a flicker of panic at the thought of being left behind. She looked around, suddenly aware of the strangers watching, judging, seeing through the facade she had carefully built. Still, her pride held her tongue. She crossed her arms, standing tall, her chin raised. "Go without me," she spat. So we did. Anna clutched my arm as we walked down the jet bridge. John followed silently, his shoulders heavy with resignation. Behind us, I could still feel Emily's eyes searing into my back, though she didn't move. When we settled into our seats on the plane, Anna leaned against me, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Mom." The words warmed me more than any victory could. I had finally drawn the line. The fallout had been messy, public, painful, but necessary. As the plane taxied down the runway, I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't consumed with guilt. Instead, I felt a strange calm, as though a weight had finally lifted. Emily might not have been on that plane, but for the first time, I felt like I was finally on the right path. When the plane touched down hours later, I felt the shift immediately. Without Emily by our side, the rhythm of the trip was different, lighter, freer, though tinged with an ache I couldn't ignore. I kept expecting her sharp comments, her sighs of impatience, her subtle ways of reminding us that nothing was ever enough. Instead, there was only Anna's quiet presence and John's heavy silence. But the fallout didn't stay contained to the airport. Word traveled fast in our family. By the time we checked into the hotel, my phone was buzzing with messages from relatives. "What happened at the airport?" Emily called me crying. "She said you embarrassed her in public. Why couldn't you just give her the ticket?" Each message felt like a dagger. Emily had already begun spinning the story, painting herself as the victim. She was always good at that, framing her entitlement as wounded pride, making others see her as misunderstood rather than spoiled. John watched me scroll through the messages, his brow furrowed. You don't have to answer them, he said softly. But I did. Not because I owed explanations, but because for once, I wanted the truth to be heard. I typed slowly, carefully. Emily demanded a first-class seat and refused to come unless we gave in. I didn't. She chose not to join us, that's all. I sent it to the family group chat and put my phone down. My hands trembled, but my heart was steady. Later that evening, as Anna and I sat on the balcony overlooking the city, she said quietly, "She's probably telling everyone you're the bad guy." I smiled bitterly. She's been telling that story her whole life, but this time, they're going to see it for what it is. And she was right. The next morning, more messages trickled in. This time, they weren't filled with blame, they were filled with questions. Is it true she shouted at you in front of strangers? Did she really say you embarrassed her by buying economy? We've noticed her attitude before, but we didn't think it was this bad. It was as if the illusion of perfect Emily had begun to crumble. The polished image she worked so hard to maintain the successful daughter, the one everyone admired, was cracking, revealing the arrogance beneath. For years, relatives had sung her praises, comparing Anna to her, making me feel guilty for not being prouder, louder about Emily's accomplishments. Now, those same relatives were starting to whisper doubts. At breakfast in the hotel, John finally broke his silence. He stirred his coffee slowly, then looked up at me. "They're starting to see her, Margaret, the real her." I nodded. "And maybe that's the only way she'll ever change." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if change was possible. Entitlement had become her armor. And when armor cracks, people don't always soften. Sometimes they harden further. That night, I received a call from my sister, Helen. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Margaret, what on earth happened?" Emily called me in tears. I explained everything, my voice calm, measured. The demand, the ultimatum, the public outburst. There was silence on the other end, then a sigh. "You did the right thing. I love her, but she's been like this for years. Maybe now she'll finally see." Her words felt like a balm. For so long, I thought I was the only one who saw it. Now I realized others had seen too, but they had stayed silent, just like John. By the third day of the trip, more relatives reached out, each with their own confession. She snapped at me once when I couldn't give her what she wanted. She always acted like she was better than us. "We just didn't want to upset you by saying anything." The picture was becoming clearer. Emily's entitlement wasn't just confined to our home. She had been leaving cracks everywhere, but I had been too blinded by love to notice. Anna listened quietly as I shared each revelation. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She only placed her hand gently on mine and said, "Now, you see her the way I've always seen her." Her words were painful, but true. The illusions I had clung to that Emily was just misunderstood, that she'd grow out of her demands, that my sacrifices would one day be enough, were shattered. All that was left was the truth. She was who she was, because I had allowed it. One evening, as we walked along the waterfront, Anna stopped suddenly, turning to face me. "Mom," she said, "I don't think this trip is about Emily anymore. I think it's about you." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "It's about you finally standing up. Finally showing everyone, even yourself, that you're worth more than being treated like this." Her words struck deep. For years, I thought my role as a mother was to endure, to give without end, to forgive endlessly. But perhaps she was right. Perhaps this trip was my moment too. I looked out at the dark water, the city lights shimmering against its surface. The reflection was broken, rippled much like my family. But maybe, just maybe, broken reflections could still hold beauty. That night, I lay awake, the sound of Anna's steady breathing in the next bed calming me. My phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Emily. Her message was short, sharp, and filled with venom. "I hope you're happy. Everyone knows what you did to me. Don't expect me to forgive you. Whew. I stared at the screen, my chest heavy. For a moment, I almost replied, almost begged her to understand. But then I set the phone down, turned off the light, and whispered into the darkness. No, Emily, it's not me who needs forgiveness this time. It's you. And for the first time in years, I drifted to sleep without guilt weighing me down. On the fourth day of the trip, the inevitable happened. Emily showed up. It was mid-morning, and Anna and I were sitting in the hotel cafe, sipping coffee and sharing a croissant, when the glass doors swung open. There she was, wheeling a polished suitcase behind her, sunglasses perched on her head, chin lifted high. My heart lurched. Part of me was relieved to see her. Another part braced for the storm. She spotted us instantly. Her heels clicked across the floor as she approached, every step loud, deliberate, demanding attention. People turned to watch her, the way they always did. Emily had that effect. She commanded a room without trying. But I could see something beneath the surface this time. A tremor in her movements, a stiffness in her posture that betrayed her pride. "Mom," she said flatly, sliding into the seat across from me. "We need to talk." Anna stiffened beside me, ready for battle. I placed a calming hand on her arm. "All right," I said quietly. "Let's talk." Nah. Emily removed her sunglasses, setting them on the table with a sharp click. "You humiliated me," she began. "At the airport, in front of everyone. I can't believe you would do that to your own daughter." Her words were accusatory, but her voice cracked just slightly at the end. I met her eyes, steady. "No, Emily. You humiliated yourself. You demanded something unreasonable, and then lashed out when you didn't get it." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "So this is it? You're just going to keep painting me as the villain?" I leaned forward. "I'm not painting you as anything. You did that on your own. But I am telling you this. I won't be manipulated anymore. If you want to be a part of this family, it has to be as an equal, not above us, not at our expense, equal." The cafe was busy, but in that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to just us three. Anna's hand trembled under the table. Emily's eyes darted away, then back again, her defenses wavering. "Equal," she repeated, as though the word were foreign. "Yes," I said firmly. "Equal. That means sitting in the same seats, sharing the same meals, talking with respect, not demands. You can't keep acting like love is something we have to buy from you." Her face flushed, her jaw tightening. For a long moment, I thought she might walk away again. But instead, she leaned back, exhaling hard. "You don't understand," she muttered. "I've worked so hard to get where I am, I can't go backwards." I tilted my head. "Is that what you think? That sitting with your family makes you less? That being treated like everyone else is beneath you?" Her silence was answer enough. Anna spoke then, her voice quiet but sharp. "Maybe you need to go backwards, Emily. Maybe you need to remember what it's like to be part of a family, instead of acting like you're better than us." One, Emily shot her a glare, but Anna didn't flinch. And for the first time, I saw something shift a crack in Emily's wall of arrogance. She tapped her fingers against the table, restless. "So what? You expect me to just sit in economy like nothing happened?" "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly what I expect. To sit with us. To be with us. Not above us." The silence that followed stretched long and taut. Emily stared at me, her eyes searching for the weak spot she always exploited. But this time, she found none. Finally, she looked away, her voice barely audible. "Fine." The word stunned me. Anna's mouth fell open. "Fine?" Emily's shoulders sagged slightly, as though the fight had drained from her. "Fine. I'll sit in economy. I'll try." The relief that flooded me was overwhelming, but I kept my voice calm. "That's all I've ever wanted, Emily. For you to try. The rest of the day was uneasy, but different. Emily joined us for lunch, quieter than usual, less sharp. At the museum, she walked beside us instead of striding ahead. When Anna pointed out a painting she loved, Emily didn't mock her taste. She nodded, thoughtful. It wasn't a miracle transformation. The pride was still there, the edge of superiority lingering in her tone. But there was also something else, the faintest glimmer of humility. That evening, as we sat together at dinner, Emily finally spoke what I had longed to hear. "I'm not saying I was wrong," she began, her voice cautious. "But maybe I went too far." At the airport, with the shouting, John, who had stayed mostly silent, placed his fork down and said, "That's a start, Emily." She glanced at him, then at me. For once, there was no smirk, no glare, just exhaustion. I reached across the table, laying my hand over hers. "I don't need perfection. I just need respect." She didn't pull away. She didn't squeeze back either. But she didn't pull away. And for now, that was enough. Later that night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had happened. The demands, the confrontation, the fallout, and now this fragile truce. Lessons in humility are rarely gentle. They come through cracks, through shattered illusions, through painful reckonings. And maybe this was just the beginning for Emily. Maybe she'd stumble again, demand again, test again. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Because humility had entered the room. Not fully, not completely, but enough to remind me that change was possible. And that was worth holding on to. The trip wound down more quietly than I expected. We visited the markets, wandered through old streets, shared meals in small restaurants tucked away from the crowds. For the first time in a long time, there were moments of peace, fragile but real. Emily walked beside us, still guarded, still careful with her words, but different. When the waiter accidentally spilled water on her dress, I braced for the explosion, the entitled fury I had seen so many times before. But instead, she pressed her lips together, sighed, and muttered, "It's fine." Not gracious, but not cruel either. It was a start. Anna noticed, too. She leaned toward me one afternoon while we sat in a park, whispering, "She's trying. You can see it." And I could. It wasn't perfection, not even close, but it was effort. And that was something I had never demanded before. I had only given. Now, for once, I was watching my daughter give, even if only a little. On the flight home, Emily sat in the economy seat beside me. She looked uncomfortable, shifting often, tugging at the blanket, sighing dramatically. But she stayed. She didn't move, didn't argue, didn't make a scene. And at one point, as Anna dozed against my shoulder, Emily leaned toward me and whispered, "Thanks for not giving in." Oh, the words nearly undid me. They weren't an apology, not really. But they were a recognition, an acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she had learned something. When we arrived home, life returned to its rhythm. Emily went back to her apartment. John returned to his workshop. Anna retreated into her books. But nothing was quite the same. The air was different, lighter. In the days that followed, I received calls from relatives. Some wanted details, some wanted gossip, but a few offered something more. Understanding. "We see it now," one of them said. "We should have said something sooner. You did the right thing." Those words mattered, but not as much as Anna's quiet presence by my side, or the flicker of humility I saw in Emily's eyes when she visited briefly the following weekend. For years, I had thought love meant giving without question. But this trip had taught me something else. Love also means boundaries. It means saying no when yes would destroy you. It means refusing to let entitlement masquerade as respect. And for once, I felt vindicated not by revenge, not by punishment, but by the quiet knowledge that I had stood firm. Emily hadn't transformed overnight. She might never change completely, but I had changed. And that was enough. Emotional fade out, 200, 300 words. As I sit here now, recounting these days, I feel the ache of all the years I spent bending, sacrificing, believing that endless giving was love. But I also feel the strength of standing up, of saying no, of reclaiming myself. Motherhood isn't servitude. It isn't measured by how much we give up, but by how much we teach our children about dignity, respect, and love that flows both ways. For too long, I confused sacrifice with devotion. I thought that if I gave everything, Emily would someday realize how much I had done for her. But the truth is, love without boundaries teaches only entitlement. I can't change the past. I can't erase the nights I spent crying over her words, the days I gave away pieces of myself. But I can change now. I can draw the line. I can teach her, even at 27, that respect matters more than a seat in first class. And perhaps, just perhaps, she will remember this trip as the moment everything shifted, not because she got what she wanted, but because for once, she didn't. The lesson was not just for Emily. It was for me too. And maybe it's for you. Have you ever been in a situation like this? Have you ever had to choose between giving in and standing firm with someone you love? Share your story in the comments. And if my story resonated with you, subscribe to Grace's Truth for more. Because sometimes, the hardest truths are the ones we need most.